Welcome back to La Pausa. It is Wednesday, April 5th. We had a ton of interesting games, action all over Europe from yesterday. We had some major upsets in the dfb-pokal. We had some massive table jumping in the relegation battle in the Premier League, and an absolute stinker by two teams that ought to be better. Let's dive in. First up, we've got dfb-pokal quarterfinal action, and we had a couple of mini upsets. Now, the teams that played here were all in the top six. So you had Eintracht Frankfurt defeating Union Berlin, and then you had SC Freiburg beating Bayern Munich. That one's definitely an upset because SC Freiburg had never won in Munich. So that's a huge win for them. Congratulations to Freiburg. But what's really notable is that Union Berlin and Bayern Munich really did not field their best teams. They didn't start all of their typical starters and their star players. And it cost them. Bayern did not start Sadio Mane, Jamal Musiala, Alphonso Davies. Now, they still had a strong team out on the field, so they should have probably still won that game. But it's really interesting to note where the pecking order comes in as Thomas Tuchel comes in, in only his second game managing the club. And I'm sure his marching orders when he was hired were go out and win us the Champions League and get us back on top of the Bundesliga. And certainly, oh, by the way, if you can win the domestic cup, great, go ahead and try and do that too, but not at the expense of the other one. So that's definitely third on the pecking order for them. It's a little more surprising for Union Berlin, given that they're not a club they're not in the Champions League. They are just off the pace in the Bundesliga, sitting in third, 4 points behind Bayern. But they could play in two competitions. That's pretty standard for better clubs. Maybe they're not there yet with their depth, and so you start to rotate these players out, and you pick up a loss. And Eintracht Frankfurt's a good club, so it's not like this is some massive upset, but it is the sort of thing that happens when you are not deep because you haven't been a successful club for a long time yet, and then you have to rotate players. So it's really interesting to see these sorts of things take place. I find it fascinating. When coaches have to make these personnel decisions, and then sometimes it ends up costing them. So that seems to be what happens, certainly in the case of Bayern Munich. The biggest action of the day came in the Premier League relegation zone, which this year is 9 teams deep. We have 9 clubs that have a legitimate chance of being relegated, as in they're within 3 points of the relegation zone, and 4 of them were in action across 3 games on Tuesday. And so Bournemouth, Leicester, Leeds, and Nottingham Forest all had a chance to grab 3 points and make some major headway. Bournemouth lost, Leicester lost, and Nottingham Forest and Leeds played one another, so they couldn't both win. And that turned out to be the game of the day, Leeds-Nottingham Forest. Forest gets out to an early goal, an early lead. Leeds comes back about 8 minutes later, and then they score again at the end of the first half, and then they were able to hold on. So intensity across the board, great game, and Leeds came into this game sitting in 18th in a relegation spot. They jumped all the way to 13th with a win. That's what 3 points can do. It jumped them 5 spots in the table, but they're still only 2 points out of the relegation zone. That's how tight this is. And so if it's not Arsenal or Manchester City playing, the best games and the best cinema in the Premier League right now is in this relegation zone, particularly when you have 2 of these 9 teams playing one another. It's fantastic sport. It's fantastic drama. The storylines are everywhere, and this is guys playing for their livelihood. This is guys the clubs playing for their livelihood, and you're not seeing all of them respond that way. Leicester turned in another dud performance as they've done all season, but when you get 2 of them together, and Leeds and Nottingham Forest battled it out, and that is football at its best. So that was just fantastic to see. And Leeds, it's going to change by week by week. 2 points is not a lot of room, but there's a lot of teams now between them and the relegation zone, thanks to goal differential, and so they're feeling a little more comfortable today. And lastly, we have what should have been the game of the day, if not the week, but as sort of expected, turned out to be the biggest dud of the week. We had Chelsea versus Liverpool playing to a pathetic 0-0 draw, and it was almost predictable with where these two clubs are right now. And this was a rescheduled game from earlier in the year, and of course Chelsea's first game without Graham Potter at the helm, and really Liverpool is the most disappointing here for me because Chelsea was ripe for the taking, right? They're just a mess right now, in total transition, total chaos. Liverpool, you've just been disappointing, right? This is almost self-inflicted for Chelsea, but with Liverpool, it's really hard to pinpoint what's gone wrong other than this team got old and tired very quickly this year, and they did not reinforce the team this offseason, and Jurgen Klopp has not rotated his players, his star players, a lot over the years. And it shows, and he didn't even start, Mo Salah and Van Dijk didn't even travel, and he did not run his best team out there. So, I guess it's not terribly shocking, but that's where we are with these two clubs right now. There were 7 shots on goal between both teams in this game. It just was not a good game, and this should have been one of the premier matchups of the season. You figure, looking at the schedule at the beginning of the Premier League season, you circle Chelsea, Liverpool, right? This is a battle for a top spot, a battle for the title race, certainly a battle for top 4. This was one of the most irrelevant matches of the week. Of the month. It just doesn't matter because neither team has a chance really to get relegated, and neither of them, I guess, they could sneak into a top 4 spot, but certainly not the way they're playing. And so there's just not a lot of energy behind the game, and so it's no wonder the players react as such. So this was just a dud of a game. And it's really just a shame to see good clubs put out performances like this. It's bad for the fans. The relegation battles were tremendously better watches as a neutral. If you weren't a Chelsea fan and you're not a Liverpool supporter, I don't know why you would have watched this game. And if you were, I'm sorry you had to watch this game. Coming up today, we got another great midweek day of action. We got the other half of the dfb-pokal quarterfinals, including Borussia Dortmund taking on RB Leipzig. It'll be interesting to see what Dortmund does with their lineup construction, if they sit some of their regulars as well. We've got 2 Premier League matchups. Manchester United plays, Newcastle plays. They're not playing each other this time around, but we could see some movement in that top 4. Remember, Manchester United has 2 games in hand. This is one of them, so they can make up some room there. And then in Spain, we've got another El Clasico, Real Madrid, Barcelona in the Copa del Rey. This is the second leg of their semifinal tie. Real Madrid is up 1-0 from the first leg. Bonus action, Ajax heading to Feyenoord in the KNVB Becker Domestic Cup in the Netherlands. So that could be a fun matchup too if you've got 4 screens to watch. Thanks as always for joining us here on La Pausa at Pints and Punditry. This is Total FIFA Career Mode.